Should you visit colleges before applying? Probably not. Although you can find hundreds of articles and blog posts that offer tips for making the most of your college visits, few of them ask the fundamental question: should you visit colleges at all, especially before gaining admission? The College Board even suggests, in a quote, "It's best to visit colleges before your applications are due. That way, you can be confident that you'd be happy at any of the colleges you're applying to." End quote. I hold the contrarian view that college visits before gaining admission almost always provide more stress and less clarity than if families didn't visit at all. Post acceptance visits are always more productive because you can ask specific questions that may determine whether you want to enroll. Applying somewhere allows for a much lower threshold than enrolling, so it isn't particularly necessary to visit colleges before deciding to apply, especially for UT Austin for most families living in Texas who are already very familiar with the campus or for whom it's already their top choice university. Consequently, the best practice remains to apply broadly to schools where you have a reasonable expectation of potentially enrolling. And so I'm pretty skeptical about the summer after junior year family college visit circuit that's become a rite of passage for the America's top 1%. Families spend thousands or sometimes tens of thousands of dollars for these whirlwind trips of Northeast small liberal arts colleges or like West Coast STEM schools or tours of the SEC. And I argue that these rites of passage are almost always a waste of time and resources. I hold the cynical suspicion that many wealthy families take summer college tours primarily or subconsciously to keep up with the Joneses and to brag about others about where they visited, rather than fearing missing out and risking alienation within their elite family friend networks. When I was writing my second book in 2021, Surviving the College Admissions Madness, I tried to find others with a similarly skeptical view about the usefulness of the college visit. But I found only a single New York Times article by journalist Erica Reicher from 2017 in Skipping the College Tour, where she calls into question the effectiveness of pre admissions college visits. I even searched the database of college tours on the New York Times, and it yields dozens of articles that have like conventional advice around best practices. And so it seems like Reicher and I are alone in our views, or that she's alone in her views at the New York Times about it not potentially being helpful. And she summarizes findings from behavioral economics about how humans of all ages and education levels struggle to forecast what our future selves really want, which is in stark contrast to the College Board's advice about how visiting campus can help you decide about where you want to go. She argues that our imagination about the future skews too far in either an optimistic or pessimistic directions, and so, like a cloudy day or an uncharismatic tour guide might knock a school off the list that would otherwise be or make good financial sense and provide a good academic fit. A more significant hazard that the New York Times journalist doesn't address is the more common occurrence of a student falling in love with an unattainable or unaffordable school, often for arbitrary reasons. Perhaps a tasty vegan poke bowl at the student cafeteria elevates a school to a student's top choice. But the author also doesn't address how mom and dad and their other child might all have incompatible perspectives of a college visit following a visit to campus. And so this can create tangible tension around the dinner table where each member of the family has different ideas about where the student might enroll or what might be affordable or attainable. And so these differing perspectives is similar to interviewing witnesses at a crime scene who, in theory, experience the same thing but internalize those events in totally different ways. A typical exchange with dozens of families goes like this. I get this all the time. They visited 11 schools in 2 weeks. Their daughter falls in love with Yale or Princeton or Tufts or whatever, but then the student has a 3.5 GPA and a 1350 on the SAT. And so there's zero universes where that student has a greater than 1% chance of gaining admission at her new dream school. Or the family makes a college list, visits many of those colleges, and then the list like doesn't change at all. So it calls into question the utility of visiting campus because a campus visit should, in theory, include or eliminate a school from the list. So if you have a college list, visit a bunch of schools junior year, summer after junior year, and it doesn't change, you have to question whether that was helpful. Premature visits also force families to discuss finances when the total cost of attendance might be unknown. And this isn't necessarily a bad thing, since financial transparency within families always is a best practice. But visiting schools too early will sometimes inflate expectations, and it might complicate family conversations around finance and affordability. And then this leads to some of the irrational behavior outlined in the New York Times journalist Reicher's piece. I'll give you an example. A former client of mine visited Carnegie Mellon, fell in love with it, and then they gained admission to UT Austin Engineering. Then they made the difficult but sound decision to enroll at UT because they couldn't justify $300,000 for a bachelor's degree. And so that student gained admission to Carnegie Mellon, but the act of getting in actually complicated things a lot for that family. And then I worked with the younger daughter, I think 2 years later, and then she was very grateful that her older brother was at UT so that way she could join and then they could be together. So many articles endorsing college tours, they suggest that it provides a family bonding experience. But I argue like if you want to have a family bonding experience, just like go on a normal vacation to an all-inclusive beach resort or go take a ski trip or like take a carnival cruise or something. Those are probably a lot more fun than sitting through university PowerPoints and receiving hard sales pitches about their like rock climbing wall or like following the student tour guides as they walk backwards down the promenade. I sometimes wonder, like, as an aside, what happened to fun for its own sake? With college applications encroaching earlier and earlier into a student's life and ever deeper into family dynamics, having like a no college admissions talk holiday may actually improve family well being and decrease stress and provide for bonding experiences. And some of my families, I think this is a great practice. They designate only one night a week to discuss college admissions and applications. And so, regardless of your age or the types of schools you're applying for, it's really important that admissions conversations don't bleed into everyday interactions. Some articles also compare college visits to test driving a car, but the analogy fails. Test driving a car permits you to buy it that day if you wish, whereas a college visit provides an equally hard sell as a car lot, yet the real prospect of rejection months down the road. Universities are incentivized to maximize their application numbers to decrease their overall admissions rates and thus increasing their rankings on college lists. However, unlike a car salesman who wants to sell as many vehicles as possible, universities restrict their offers through artificial scarcity. Other justifications for the pre acceptance college visit include demonstrated interest, but most universities have moved away from this factor as a consideration on grounds of equity since it privileges families with the resources to visit campus. You can also attend virtual information sessions for schools that do still consider demonstrated interest, so it doesn't require you to actually fly there and to kind of get whatever bonus points they might have in their process. Pre admission college visits might be fruitful if you intend to visit extended family in another part of the country, or you want to visit nearby universities where it isn't a burden, or maybe you want to hang out with a sibling who might be at that college. Other ways to visit are like formal summer internships or research programs, which are a great way to explore campus resources and get a feel for the campus more than just visiting the city and receiving an afternoon sales pitch. Pre admissions visits might also help if you're determining whether to apply binding early decision, especially if it's a school you're unfamiliar with. I strongly caution against applying binding ED to a school that you've never visited or lightly researched. But since UT doesn't offer binding early decision, then this consideration isn't relevant for UT Austin admissions. One caveat and some nuance is some demographics do benefit from pre admission college visits, including rural and urban students who may not come from college going communities. Developing college literacy and exploring opportunities on campus may encourage some students to apply to or enroll at a four-year university who might not have otherwise, or maybe just assume they were going to community college. And that college literacy piece is one reason that almost every university have these all expenses paid for fly-in or overnight bus experiences to reach out to those marginalized communities. So that means first generation college students, recent immigrants, or families who did not receive their undergraduate degrees in the United States might benefit from getting a general feel for American college life. For a reference point, I was a first generation college student and I only applied to UT. I had never visited Austin, and honestly, I would have significantly benefited from visiting campus or the liberal arts honors program on a formal tour, which is what I ended up enrolling at as a UT freshman. And I applied to UT like almost solely because my dad is a Longhorn football fan, right? Nevertheless, pre college admissions visits provide a binary choice. Either you apply or you don't apply. They aren't as informative for creating a hierarchy of preferences, and they don't account for the systematic errors in reasoning that the New York Times journalist outlined. If you've already resolved to apply to UT, and since UT doesn't consider demonstrated interest, I would honestly reconsider a formal visit and instead just like go to a football or a basketball game or attend a concert in Austin or just like do something fun. Some instances where visiting helps are if you're considering a much more niche program like UT's Plan 2 Honors, which is hard to get a feel for when you just read about it online, or other bespoke programs like the Lot Scholars Program at Ole Miss, which is a highly prestigious program that also does a lot of personalized concierge and provides more substantial experience on the visit itself beyond just the standard tour guide, like walking backwards in the canned PowerPoint presentation that your counselor has memorized. Another way it might help is if you really are genuinely torn between, say, Moody Communications or Macomb School of Business or electrical computer engineering versus computer science, then attending those major specific information sessions can potentially help resolve those dilemmas. Still, I recommend saving money on pre admissions tours by just going on a vacation or putting those resources towards application fees and eventual tuition. Apply to a reasonable list of schools, then receive your admissions offers, assess the costs, and then determine your top 3 or 4 choices. And if there isn't a clear frontrunner, like UT, then consider visiting. Even for a university that is your clear frontrunner, visiting can help address logistical questions or even make new friends or a future roommate. Notice that throughout this video, I focus on pre-acceptance admissions visits and tours, and I'm skeptical of these. On the other hand, visiting campus officially or unofficially after gaining admission can be incredibly fruitful because these hypothetical variables before you get in around your major or honors or cost, these things become concrete. And so there are honestly zero instances where a pre-admission visit could be more productive than a post-admissions visit, except that it may require visiting over spring break during senior year or missing a few school days. So there can be some inconvenient logistics. Still, post acceptance visits permit an academic advisor to explore potential first year courses. You can check out your future residence hall, figure out parking or public transportation, consult with the financial aid office, discuss major changes or other on campus programs, attend future classes potentially. You can ask about sports tickets. You can nail down summer orientation and other sort of soon to enroll student questions. Visiting when there are fewer unknowns will help make a more informed decision about where to enroll. I hope this video helps you and maybe saves you and your family money and potentially wasted time on unnecessary college visits. Email me directly at kevin@texadmissions.com with any questions, and you can also complete the questionnaire in the information section in this video for a free email admissions consultation. Thanks, and I hope you have a great day.